La 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 la.
No.
La 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 la. Baseball cards. It's CardKast with Mike and Lenz, the show about everything sports cards, autographs, and memorabilia. I'm Len plus Z, and I'm here with my friend and co-host Mike D. All right, we are back, and I'm here with my good partner and friend Mike D. And unfortunately, we just learned that as we're about to do a little bit of a tribute show to one of the all-time greats, we just found out that we lost one of the all-time greats. And it is Friday, January 22nd, 2021, and we lost Hank Aaron today.
Yeah, really sad news.
Yeah, so we will absolutely be doing a tribute show to him at another point. But right now we have a special guest on. And so back in September 2020, I posted a Fresh Catch video, episode 14, and it was a collection of about 11 Mickey Mantle autographs plus a few others like Billy Martin and Whitey Ford. The story behind the acquisition of these autographs intrigued me greatly. They came from Joseph Solaro's family, and the background of the story was he obtained most of the autographs down at Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford Fantasy Camp. Unfortunately, we lost Joseph back in 2014. In this Fresh Catch video, I had asked if anyone knew anybody that participated in these camps. We did a rewind video through Earl's World Universe, and Stephen Lane out of Louisiana answered the call. He has attended the camp in 1985 and 2019 and is going to share his experience today. He has a really obscure collection of Mantle and other baseball collectibles, which we'll discuss later in the show. But for now, please welcome to the show, Stephen Lane.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, hey Stephen. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's always nice to have a guest on, especially someone as knowledgeable and has an extensive collection like you.
Well, thank you.
And really quick, before we get into the questions, Mike and I were just talking about it. Was it called? I mean, I was basing it off of the documentary that was done that had Mel Allen do the voiceover for it, and it was called Mickey, Whitey, and Me, and I keep referring it to the Mickey Mantle Whitey Ford Fantasy Camp. Was it just the Yankees Fantasy Camp, or was it featuring those guys, or was it the Mickey Mantle Whitey Ford Fantasy Camp?
Well, what it was actually, it was called Baseball Fantasies Fulfilled, and what happened was, in the late 1970s, Willie Mays had been banned from baseball. And in 1983, Mickey Mantle had been banned from baseball because they were working at casinos. In around mid-1980s, 1985, a fantasy camp was started by a guy by the name of Max Shapiro. He called it Baseball Fantasies Fulfilled. And he wanted to try and get Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays to come to the camp, but they'd been banned from baseball. Well, in March of 1985, Peter Ubroth was the new commissioner. He lifted the ban. So as of March of 1985, Mantle and Mays could get back into baseball. They could wear their uniforms and do whatever they'd been doing before. So Shapiro invited Mantle and Mays to this camp in 1985. And coincidentally, I had just turned 30 in 1985, and it was a 30 and over camp. You had to be 30 years old. So they scheduled this camp for May of 1985, and they had Mantle, they had Mays, they had Whitey Ford, Ernie Banks, Monty Irvin, all Hall of Famers, Moose Skowron, and other Yankees and other players. And that was Mantle's first appearance after he had been banned from baseball. And as a result, and as a result of Ford and Mantle going to that camp, they got the idea, well, we don't need anybody else to run a camp. We'll just run a camp. And then they started their own shortly thereafter. But this camp in 1985 by Baseball Fantasies Fulfilled was really the first camp.
Wow.
Isn't Isn't that amazing? That first of all, I didn't realize. I had heard. I didn't really pay attention, but yeah, about the casino thing that they were banned. But imagine that happening today, like banning greats because they worked for casinos. And I'm assuming they weren't like blackjack dealers. They were people who were just like lending their name or something to the casinos.
Yeah, I mean it was garbage. It was so ridiculous because the baseball owners at that time, some of them owned racehorses or racetracks or other things tied to gambling, and it didn't affect their ownership of a team. Mantle and Mays were just either greeters, or Mantle would make appearances once in a while. It had nothing to do, with them being in the casino or doing anything at the casino. And at that time, Mantle was getting paid $100,000 by the casino, and Mays was getting paid, I think, $50,000. And neither the Yankees nor the Giants were paying that much to Mantle or Mays. So for Mantle and Mays, it was simply they wanted to earn a living. And if baseball wasn't going to pay them, they didn't see anything wrong with working at a casino. And, in hindsight, it was all very stupid. And Ubroth realized that when he took over for Bowie Kuhn. And one of the first things he did was to bring them back into baseball. And it was a famous cover of Sports Illustrated with Mantle, Mays, and Ubroth on the March 1985 cover of Sports Illustrated.
And how did you actually hear? You mentioned how old you were. You said you were 30. How did you actually hear about the camp? Being a 30-year-old guy, was this like a popular thing? Was it mentioned in magazines or something? How would you have heard of it?
Nobody knew about it, and I didn't know about it. And I was a collector at the time and had been a collector since I was about 7 years old, since early 1960s. Somebody saw a very small article in a newspaper and brought it to me and said, look, they're having this baseball camp. Have you ever heard of it? And I never did. And I contacted them. And the only thing I wanted to know was, is Mantle going to be there? I didn't care who else was going to be there. If Babe Ruth came back from the dead, it wouldn't have made any difference. I wanted, if it was Mantle or nothing. And they said, yeah, we're trying to get Mickey. He just got back into baseball. We're pretty sure he'll be there. And I said, fine. I took a chance and I signed up, and lo and behold, he was there.
Well, there's actually, I don't know if you guys follow Seinfeld, but there was actually a funny episode where Kramer went to a Yankee fantasy camp and he punched Mickey Mantle in the face. They never actually had Mickey Mantle on the show, but it was a great storyline. And it goes to the credence of how popular the fantasy camps became, that it was on a mainstream show.
Right.
Right. And that was just before sports memorabilia and autographs were a big thing, because what happened at this camp was, other than bats, a Mantle would sign whatever you wanted. It was not a big deal for him. And once you went to the camp, you didn't have to pay extra for the autographs. And imagine you had Mantle, Mays, Ford, Banks, all there to sign whatever you wanted. And they were there, 24 hours a day for 5 or 6 days in a row. I mean, that would never happen.
Yeah, I mean that does sound like a fantasy. Now, Steve, do you remember how much it cost to attend the camp?
Yeah, in 1985, the camp cost about $3,000 or $3,200, which included a week there, and it included the meals and the transportation to and from the airport. Didn't include the flight. And when you factor that out to today's dollars, that would be a little over $7,000 today. So, I mean, for a 30-year-old, it was a lot of money, and I was the youngest one in the camp. Most of the other campers were at least 40, some up to 55, but I just barely made it by 2 months.
Wow. You hit the lottery twice there. So you just got in because of your age, and then the other thing about seeing that little article, the stars were lining for you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was all being in the right place at the right time. If my friend doesn't find the article, I wouldn't have gone. If they hadn't let Mantle back into baseball, I wouldn't have gone. And if they hadn't been able to get him to show up at the camp, I wouldn't have gone. So it was just a matter of luck. And it was really a one-time happening, because once that camp happened, and then Mantle and Ford did their own camp, and then the memorabilia, craze really started hitting, and Mickey started making big money. His willingness to sign things was less and less, certainly in terms of bats, and you only had a limited opportunity to get his autograph. You're not going to have him for 5 or 6 days in a row any place. So it was really a matter of luck, and that's the way it's been for me since I started collecting, because a lot of the things I have are really a matter of luck and matter of timing, or a matter of people coming to me and giving me information that allowed me to collect this stuff.
That's awesome. What was your mindset leading up to the week before you were heading down to Florida?
Well, it's a funny and not so funny story. I had, been active in like softball leagues and stuff when I was 30. So I'd been playing ball. It wasn't a question of getting into shape or back into shape or anything. But about 2 or 3 weeks before the camp, I was rear-ended at a stoplight by somebody who was going about 40 miles an hour, which caused me to suffer back injuries. And I was afraid I wasn't going to make it to the camp. And the doctor gave me, pain medication, all kinds of stuff. And by some miracle, probably because I was 30 years old and not 50 years old, my back healed up within the 3 weeks, and I was able to do whatever I had to do. So my main focus was just getting there and being able to play. And I was able to do that, and everything was fine. But, those fantasy camps are tough. To go 5 or 6 days and playing the number of games they had in Florida in 95-degree weather, double headers. But by the end of the week, I don't care if you're 30 or 60, it's taken its toll.
I think your body knew that you were going to see Mickey Mantle, so it healed up for you.
Look, I definitely had, what do they call it, when you get caught up in the excitement. I'm at a loss for words.
The adrenaline?
The adrenaline, definitely. The adrenaline was flowing for that week. Once the week was over, I really felt it, but the adrenaline was flowing that whole week.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the accident leading into it probably took away from a little bit of the excitement, because there's anxiety of, you may not be able to go and actually do this, and if you, since you already had done it, and you put yourself your mind back to before, if you didn't go, can you imagine not going after you had went?
Yeah, I would have been miserable. But again, I was lucky. I was young enough that I was recovered from it, and everything was fine. But it was a full day. You started at 7 a.m. and you weren't done. Sometimes, the way some of these guys partied, until midnight or early the next morning. You were definitely leading the stereotypical baseball player's life in the 1980s.
When you first walked in the locker room, what was your impression?
Well, the first thing you see is the uniform hanging, and everybody wanted number 7. So all you'd see is this lineup of Yankee pinstripe uniforms, all with your last name on it, and the number 7, the cap and the belt and the pants. And at that time, the players all wore the stirrups, which they don't wear anymore, to hold the socks up. And then they'd have a nameplate with your name at the top of the locker. And, then you said, I'm a ball player now. And they treated you like a ball player. They had people to take care of you if you were injured. They had trainers. They had guys who washed your uniforms every night. They would bring in a buffet in the middle of the day between games. So, you were treated just like the ball players were. And, it took place. You may not, some of your listeners may not be familiar, but we played at 2 different fields. One was Al Lang Field in St. Petersburg, where the Yankees in the 1950s and 60s had their spring training, and one was Al Lopez Field, where the White Sox and the Cincinnati Reds had their training, and we played at both fields. And it was really, you knew what it was like to play baseball in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when you went to this camp. And these facilities are nothing like the facilities they have now. It's like night and day. So it was a lot different when these guys played in the 60s and 70s compared to what the players have today when they walk into a locker room. But it was just so exciting to just see the uniform and know that you were going to be playing ball for the net, doing nothing but playing baseball for an entire week.
You were assigned to a team, I'm assuming, and did you bond with those teammates, or was there competition within the teammates to kind of shine in front of these legendary ball players? How was the camaraderie there?
Well, I can only talk about my team. Like I said, I was the youngest on the team. Most of the others were 40s and 50s. But we bonded very well, and they had a competition. In other words, there were 10, 11 guys on the team, and there were 6 teams. There were about 65, 66 campers in 85, and you played against each team each day, and whoever, won at the end of the week got a trophy. So there was competition between teams, and some teams were a team of Brooklyn Dodger players. One team was a team of New York Giant players because they were New York Giant fans. And then you had 3 or 4 teams that were Yankee fans. So you had Dodgers, Giants, and Yankees playing against each other. And some coaches were former Yankees, like I said, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford. Some coaches were former Giants, like Willie Mays. And some coaches were from other teams like Ernie Banks and Monty Irvin. So between the coaches, there was real competition. There was a lot of going back and forth between the major league players when their teams won. One of the guys there was Tommy Davis, who used to play for the Los Angeles Dodgers and was a 2-time batting champion. Well, when his team, the Dodgers, beat a Yankee team, that's all you heard about for the rest of the day was how his Dodgers beat the Yankees.
Oh my God! Imagine Mickey Mantle being your manager and you having to not disappoint him. Who was your manager, by the way?
I had Tom Sturdivant, who was a Yankee pitcher in the 1950s, and Moose Scourin was our other coach. And it was funny because I hit pretty well. I did hit pretty well during the week. And from time to time, Moose would grab another pro player. He'd grab Tommy Davis, or he'd grab, he grabbed Jose Cardinal, who used to be a Yankee coach. He'd grab him when I came to bat, and I'd hear him. He would be say, "Watch this kid lane. This kid could hit." So it was pretty exciting in that way. And in fact, at the end of the week, the players would sign baseballs, and a couple of them put things on there, great hitter, or Tommy Davis on my ball put Steve Too Fast Lane because he thought I was really slow. So they gave us a lot. Some guys gave us a lot of grief, and every night they had a bull session after dinner. You go to the bar. They had a revolving bar at the top of this hotel we were staying at, and you'd spend 2 or 3 hours with all these players, and they would just tell stories.
Oh my God, that's what I wanted. That's what I really wanted to kind of get at. Were you able to hang out with the players?
And fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon how you look at it, well, there were no cell phones in 1985, and nobody could record, this stuff. But if you did, you would either have a documentary or a book, because they were telling all these stories. Ernie Banks told a great story. He said, and the Cubs were always in last place, and he said it was August. It was like 100 degrees outside. They were playing the Cardinals. It was the first game of a doubleheader. It's tied going into the bottom of the 8th inning, and Banks comes back into the dugout from the field, and he just looks at all the players and he says, "Guys, let's either win or lose this game in 9."
kind of the opposite of let's play 2. He didn't want to play 2 that day.
Well, he might have wanted to play 2, but only 9 innings.
Right.
Play 18.
So they were really characters.
What was the day-to-day scheduling like for the week?
Well, like I said, it was a full day. I mean, you go downstairs to get breakfast, usually about 7 a.m.
Okay, 7 a.m. Gotcha.
7 a.m. You go down for breakfast because you had to catch the bus by 8. The team bus took everybody to the stadium to get there about, 8:30 or so. You get dressed. Every day you'd warm up, you do stretching exercises, and they would spend also maybe a half hour, 45 minutes to teach you a certain aspect of the game, whether it was running the bases or taking the lead or hitting the cutoff man or batting tips or shagging flies or infield practice or that type of stuff. And then you'd play your first game from about 10 to 1, and then they take a break. You go back into the locker room, and like I said, they'd have a buffet lunch set up, assuming you wanted to eat after playing a game in 95-degree heat. And then you go out at about 1, stretch again for a while, play another game that usually went from about 2 or 3 to 5 p.m., shower, get back on the bus, head back to the hotel, and, dinner either with your team or with whoever you wanted. It was optional. You were on your own. And then usually about 7 o'clock or so, they would have some bull session in the bar. Or one night, they had a special Mickey Mantle night where Mantle showed highlights from his career and spoke a little and, spent a lot of quality time with each camper, answering all the questions they had, signing more autographs. One night, all the drinks were on him. He just stayed at the bar for hours with the guys and picked up the tab. And, just a once in a lifetime opportunity. And then on the Friday night that we were there, we played a night game against the major league players in front of a crowd for charity. They sold tickets. And then the same thing Saturday afternoon. We played a game in front of a crowd. They sold tickets for charity. And you got to play against, Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays. And actually, Whitey Ford pitched to me, which was a nightmare because I'm a left-handed hitter. And he literally, it is not an exaggeration, threw the ball, started it at my head, and the ball broke 2 feet off the corner of the plate. And I was determined not to strike out. I didn't care what happened. I was not going to strike out. I ended up with a check swing ground ball. And I'll never forget, after I was out and afterwards, when he was back in the dugout, he and Johnny Roseboro was the catcher. He and Johnny Roseboro were there. And I'm going, how did that pitch break 2 feet? And they both start laughing. And I didn't know what they were laughing at. And then Whitey Ford shows me his ring. He wore a ring that he would use to cut the ball, have a bigger break. And I'm going, I can't tell you what curse words I said to him about cutting a ball against a camper in a camper. I'm paying $3,200 that he didn't care. There was nobody getting a hit off of. There was no camper getting a hit off of Whitey Ford that day.
He wasn't grooving pitchers to the common folk.
Oh, he was not grooving anything. So, but that was pretty cool. That was a good experience.
That's the story right there. that Whitey Ford did that to you. That is awesome.
You mentioned before that you played, you hit well and this and that. And I mean, I can't imagine, again, I mean, you were 30, and so your body probably recovered better than some of the other guys. But I couldn't imagine playing all day in the sun, going through all the, all the drills and then playing and then whatever. Then going to the bar and having drinks after. I mean, were guys like, I mean, I can't imagine guys wanting to check out early, but to save the next day and to not be completely wary. I mean, what time were guys checking out? 10, 11, 12, 2?
Well, look, it varied from person to person. There were some guys that they must have had wooden legs to put away the alcohol that they were putting away. I just, 1 or 2 drinks is my limit. Some of these guys were going for hours, and I'll tell you a Mantle story about that in a second. But what would happen was you'd finish for the day. If you went, not me, but when I went into the trainer's room, I mean, it looked like the waiting, like the waiting line for the coronavirus vaccine. Okay. I mean, these 40, 50 and 60-year-old guys, had sprains and strains and ankle problems, and the shoulders were hurting, and guys were in slings, and they were getting iced down and taped up. And it was, I mean, I had my aches and pains at the end of the week, but nothing like that. And I was wondering, how are these 50 and 60-year-old guys doing it? But somehow they did, because it was, something that they never envisioned happening before, because it was one of the first camps. And at some of their ages, they probably figured, well, I'm never going to do this again. Plus, it was pretty expensive for people. A lot of people only did it once. Some people do it multiple times, but some only did it once. Now, the Mantle story about the drinking, there was one night, like I said, he was paying for drinks. It got to midnight, and I just said, that's it, guys. I'm going to bed, and I was gone. Well, the next morning, I come down the elevator about, 6:30 in the morning for breakfast. The door opens in the lobby, and who is walking into the elevator as I'm walking out? But Mickey Mantle, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, there is no way this guy is making it to the ballpark today. Just forget it. Well, I have my breakfast, get on the bus, head to the park. 9:00, we're all warming up. Big black limousine pulls up onto the field. Back door opens, and coming out in his pinstripe uniform was Mickey Mantle.
Oh,
it looked as sober as can be, as if all he had to drink that night was tea. And he gutted it out the whole day in that heat. He did his clinic. He threw the ball around. He didn't play a doubleheader, but he threw the ball around, and was just a pleasure to be around, pose for pictures with everybody. It was unbelievable. I was in awe. When he got out of that limousine, I just said, hey, look, that's superhuman.
Well, we still consider him superhuman. So, I mean, they said he did that when he was in his playing days, and you got to witness it firsthand. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, he was my hero. He was hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other fans' heroes, which is probably why, or one of the reasons why, a piece of cardboard sold for $5.2 million last week. I mean, that will not happen to anybody else. I don't care if it's Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Willie Mays. It's just Mantle stands alone for reasons that are personal to everybody that's either played baseball or collects baseball cards or memorabilia. He
is definitely ingrained in the collector's DNA. And Mike and I spoke about this last week, how at a young age, I was taught that Mantle was the cornerstone of the hobby. As the hobby was forming, because Mike and I were in our mid 40s now, and we were kids. We were 10, 11 years old back in 86, 87. And that's when it was shortly after that 85 visit that you had is when it really, really started to take off.
Right. And like I said, I just happened to be at the right place and the right time and born in the right era. Like I said, I started collecting in '62 when I was 7 years old. And again, it was only timing that I was a Yankee fan because I grew up in Brooklyn. And if I had, been born 10 years earlier or even 5 years earlier, I probably would have been a Brooklyn Dodger fan. But by the time I was a fan, the Brooklyn Dodgers had left Brooklyn. The New York Giants had left New York. And the Yankees were the only team that existed in New York as of 1961. The Mets started in '62, but I was not crazy enough to root for a team that lost 120 games a year. So, my dad brought me up as a Yankee fan, and Mantle was the cornerstone. And what's really amazing is if you look at that team from the early '60s, every single starting player on that team was an all-star from '62, '63, '64. You can name any player in that lineup, they were an all-star. And out of all those stars, Mantle was head and shoulders above the rest.
Their backup players were also, I mean, they could have probably started almost any place else. Their backup players like, Hector Lopez and Johnny Blanchard and, those guys, I mean, they contributed a lot during those seasons.
Right. I mean, look, you had Yogi Berra was a Hall of Fame catcher who they had to put in the outfield from time to time to make room for Elston Howard to play catcher.
Right.
I mean, where have you ever heard of, a Hall of Fame catcher moving someplace else to put another guy in the field? That doesn't happen.
Well, here's something that a lot of people don't realize. In the '61 season, when Mantle and Maris had their home run chase together, the three catchers, Berra, Blanchard, and Elston Howard, all hit 20 home runs each. So in the catcher position, you had 60 home. Well, I mean, Berra did play a little bit of the outfield, and who knows what it was, but you had three catchers literally hit 20 home runs each on the same team.
Right, and if you go back and look at the World Series from that year, it wasn't Mantle and Maris that won it for the Yankees. It was Lopez and Blanchard and really Whitey Ford that won it because Mantle only played 1 or 2 games. He was injured. Maris didn't get his first hit in the series until Game 3, and then when you look at the last 2 games, 4 and 5, it was all Blanchard, Lopez, and some of the Bobby Richardson. Some of the other players. It was not Mantle and Maris.
Yeah, Kubek was good.
Right.
Now we're going off a little bit in the weeds here. So I just wanted to bring this up. Now, what was your personal interaction, being that you're a Yankees fan, your personal interaction with Ford and Mantle like when you were at that camp in '85?
Well, it was just unbelievable. They were, like I said, they were all eager to sign stuff. When we were in the dugout, because Mantle was not playing a doubleheader, but when we're sitting in the dugout and Ford's not pitching, and you got Mantle, Ford, and Moose Skowron all in the dugout at the same time, ribbing each other and joking with campers and telling stories. And there was one point in time, I recall, where Mantle and Skowron got hungry, and they say, will somebody get me a hot dog? I almost hit my head on the roof of the dugout to be the first one out there to get him a freaking hot dog. And like I said, they had a Mickey Mantle night there. He answered everybody's questions. It was in an atmosphere where they felt comfortable, where they didn't feel as though they were around, fanatics who were going to bug them. They felt they were around people who loved baseball, loved to talk baseball. It gave them an opportunity to talk baseball without, being surrounded by hundreds of people. And they enjoyed the uniqueness of this fantasy camp. They'd never seen anything like it before, where they've got to play with their old friends. And it wasn't like Old Timers Day, where it's in front of 60,000 people. There was nobody there except for the 2 games that we played at the end of the week. So it was very, very relaxed and laid back. And they posed for pictures, and they signed whatever you wanted to sign. And it's not something that has ever happened before. And probably never will again, because there's never going to, statistics aside, no matter what Mike Trout or other players do, there will never be anyone that has the aura among fans that Mantle had.
So what was your experience like the second time you went to fantasy camp? You went in 2019?
Yeah, the second time, was a lot different for several reasons. First of all, I was 64 years old, so I went from being one of the youngest campers to one of the oldest campers, and I did have to get in shape because I literally had not played baseball in probably 20, 25 years. And when I started working out, I was lucky if I could throw the ball 30 feet, which is halfway from home plate to the pitcher's mound. And it took me about 3 or 4 months to work out to the point that I could throw the ball and hit the ball again and get in shape to run the bases and make sure that I was able to fit in the uniform. When I lied to them and filled out my form and told them my waist size, it was a total lie based upon the belief that I was going to lose 20 pounds by the time I got to camp. So I had to get into shape. And once I got there, there were guys, again, 30, 35, 40 years old, but I was amazed that I was able to keep up with them. I did make it through. My goal at that point was to just make it through the week and not embarrass myself, and I didn't. I played every game, played the double headers. In fact, there were some guys there in their 30s and 40s who did have injuries that I didn't have. One guy that was 35 years old, that had to take to the hospital due to dehydration.
Wow.
Because he hadn't, followed the recommendations of people drinking plenty of water. And the conditions were much different. I mean, this took place at the Yankee complex in Tampa, where the Yankees have spring training. I mean, it is a multi-million-dollar, gorgeous, state-of-the-art complex. I mean, the locker rooms are gorgeous and huge. They had underground batting cages where you could practice. They had a huge weight room and a fitness center that you could work out if you wanted to. The food was first class. They gave you all types of swag every single day. Besides the fact that they gave you major league uniforms, they gave us hoodies and short sleeve T-shirts and long sleeve T-shirts and backpacks and everything you could think of with a Yankee insignia on it is what they gave us. And the players were great. I mean, there was no Mantle, or Mays or Ford there, but the players who were there were they enjoyed the camp. And in fact, all of them were younger than me, so that was a change. But it was thoroughly enjoyable, and the cost for that camp was, I think I want to say $5,200, which, when you think of it, is still less than what the 1985 camp would cost in today's dollars. So it was still,
right,
a good deal. It was a good deal, and could have been happy.
Who were some of the stars that were there? The players.
Well, let's see. They had Mickey Rivers was there.
But probably guys, Yankees from the 70s and 80s, I would assume.
70s, 80s, and 90s. Mike Torres was there. You had Bucky Dent. You had Chris Chambliss.
That's a lot of Yankee history right there in the 70s.
Yeah. Jim Leyritz was there. I can't remember the Yankee name. The guy that played for the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Johnny Damon.
Johnny Damon was there. So it was pretty good. It was a good group, and they all could play, and just had a great time.
After collecting all these years, can you share some of the highlights of your collection?
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have a show and tell. It's too bad we don't have a show and tell, because like I said, I've been really lucky over the years, and my goal was always to collect as much Mantle stuff as I could, and I think I've been lucky enough to collect, basically to trace his life in memorabilia. You know, he was born in 1931, and I have the first studio photograph of Mantle taken when he was about 12 or 13 years old in 1943. Came from his family. I have one of the first known, if not the first known, autographs of Mantle from 1947 when he was a sophomore in high school, and he signed his name Mickey Chuck Mantle. And I don't think I've ever seen him sign his name Mickey Chuck Mantle. I have the first dated and signed Mickey Mantle baseball that he signed in 1949, right after he got out of high school. One of the first minor league games he played, it came from his first roommate when he played for the Independence Yankees. And I've got his game-used bats from 1953 and his Player of the Year awards from 1956 and 1961, and his All-Star bat from 1962 that I got coincidentally from Reggie Jackson. Came out of his personal collection. I've got his game-used glove from 1963, which came from his family, and there's only 3 or 4 of those game-used gloves from his prime that even exist. One, I think, is in the Hall of Fame, and one a private collector has, and mine. I think that's it. And I recently got his 535th home run. It's a famous home run because it was the one that Denny McLain told Mantle he was going to groove for him so that Mantle could hit it and move into third place in the home run standings behind Ruth and Mays. So I've got that ball. So a bunch of stuff. I've got a ball autographed by Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, and Maris. That's pretty rare. I don't know that I've seen one of those before.
Ow.
And I've got an autographed picture that he signed to his mother. Why he signed an autographed picture to his mother, I don't know, but it's a dear mom from your loving son Mickey, so I have that as well, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a couple of rooms worth of stuff and all of his cards, including the 52 Topps card, but it's not a 9 or a 10, unfortunately.
What do you charge for admission to your house?
Since the coronavirus, I really haven't had anybody over, but it was not unusual from time to time when people found out what I had that they'd want to come over and see it. And I've had some friends who have people. We used to have a minor league team here up until a couple of years ago, and there were a couple of ball players that found out about it, wanted to come see it, wanted to hold Mantle's bat, have their pictures taken with him, that type of thing. So I've had that happen to me.
So you've become a celebrity, kind of like Mickey Mantle, in your own right.
A little bit. I think Sports Collectors Digest is getting ready to put a little story in on my collection in a future issue. I don't know when that's coming out, but certainly within the next couple of months.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. And I guess I have to correct myself. I made a huge error as far as calling your space of collectibles a man cave. I mean, that is of museum quality for sure. And I think you should just start charging admission. It'll probably help pay for part of one thing that's in there. So were there as far as acquiring this, I heard you say you got some from players and this and that. I mean, were you purchasing anything from like auction houses or anything like that, or?
Yeah, I've purchased from auction houses from time to time. But a lot of times it's just people know that I collect the stuff and they'll contact me and say, and that's how I got the bat from Reggie Jackson. There was a friend of mine who named John Tawby, who is a bat expert, who contacted me and said, look, I can get you a Mickey Mantle 1962 All-Star bat at a good price. Would you be interested? And he gave me a price, and I said, well, I think that price is a little high. And then he said, well, it belongs to Reggie Jackson, and he would hand it to you. And I said, fine, when do I write out the check?
The price is too low.
Right. No.
And then one other, I was really lucky. One of our clients here at the law firm, who lives in New Orleans, was the president of the demolition company that demolished the inside of Yankee Stadium in 1973. And he was at my office looking at some of my stuff, and almost on a dare said, look, if you're ever in New York, come visit me. I have this huge airplane hangar of stuff that I removed from Yankee Stadium. You can take whatever you want. And he didn't realize that I was born and raised in New York and that I visit my mother every summer. So I said, fine, I'll be there in a month. Just, let me know when you're going to be there. And sure enough, he let me take out whatever I wanted to take, including the only existing copy of the original architect drawings from 1922 of the original Yankee Stadium.
Oh my God. Wow.
That is unbelievable. Dude, I'm sorry. For a personal note, you said you were born, you were raised in Brooklyn. I also live in Brooklyn. I was just curious where in Brooklyn you were.
Yeah, well, I used to live at 1580 East 13th Street between O and P in the Kings section of Brooklyn. And I also lived right off of Coney Island Coney Island Avenue when I was growing up. And all my family, lived in Brooklyn at the time. So I've been in all sections of Brooklyn at one time or another.
Not far from me. I'm in Bergen Beach. So very close. Very cool.
Well, Stephen Fast Lane, thank you so much for coming on. I can't thank you enough for coming on, because you definitely filled in the gaps, and this conversation was everything that I had hoped for, something that I was not able to obtain when I purchased that collection back over the summer in 2020. And not that I would be able to purchase your collection, but but I really appreciate you coming on. Well,
look, it's my pleasure, and I'm always looking forward to talk about baseball and memorabilia. I assume your audience is substantially younger than I am, and hopefully they've gotten something out of this discussion.
Yes, definitely. So with that, Mike, thank you very much. Stephen, thank you very much. And we are out of here. A sincere thank you to all the listeners out there. If you like the show, please like, share, and comment below, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you will be notified when all of our new shows are uploaded. Click on the links below to join Mike and Len's Facebook page loaded with sports memorabilia content. Visit Mike's opening day break room to see tons of new products opened up daily that you can participate in. And lastly, visit our eBay store CardKast to look for the newest auctions of sports cards and memorabilia uploaded weekly. And we're out.